outstanding. To tell us more about Peru's economy, please welcome Mr. Julio Velarde, the President of the Central Bank of Peru, who will speak on Peru, Sound Fundamentals for Sustainable Growth. Please give him a warm welcome.
Good morning. I will start also saying welcome to Peru. I will talk a little bit about the economy of Peru and the Latin American countries. And I will start with a comparison. Next, please. The comparison of the growth of Asia and Latin America. The next slide, please. It's there. Okay, sorry. In fact, Latin America faced two problems that we're going to see after the Second World War. First, is engaged in more protectionist practices, import tariffs without promoting exports. Of course, a lot of Asian countries also try to promote import substitution, but at the same time, they try to promote exports. And the difference of growth can be visible after some time. In the 60s and 70s, while our Asian partners at APEC were growing a little bit more than Latin American countries were still doing not so bad, 60s and 70s. 70s in part fueled by debt that we're acquiring while having big fiscal deficits. Then I believe that in the last years, the lack of reforms around the region have affected the growth of the different countries. Next, please. Well, we can see that the previous one, please. It's not very important. Fiscal deficit have been pretty important in the region. In the 80s, the Latin American members of APEC had a deficit of almost 9%. Of course, most of the countries had done their job, and they had controlled inflation now. So macro fundamentals, I would say in most of the bigger economies, are completely under control. Argentina is on their way now. Argentina is trying to push for important reforms, and they are trying also to control inflation. After many decades where inflation has been rampant in Argentina. Well, you see the fiscal deficit there, and you can see how to cause inflation. Inflation in the 80s was pretty high. Even in the 90s, although many countries introduced their stabilization policies in that decade. And next, please, in growth, you can see that the bigger countries in Latin America, the next one, please, Brazil and Mexico have grown much less than the APEC, and much less, of course, than some of our partners in APEC in Asia. In the case of Peru, we grew a little more than APEC, than APEC as an average, but the problem is the bigger countries in the region we're facing very slow growth. Next one, please. If we compare this century, the growth of APEC has been a little less than 4%, while Peru has grown slightly above 4%. But you can see there, in general, Asian countries have been growing at a faster rate. Of course, there are some Asian countries that are growing a little bit less. You can see that in the graph. But in general, Asian countries have been growing at a higher rate. In this century, as I mentioned, we control inflation. Next one, please. And in most of the countries now is within the target. Chile, Colombia, Mexico have a target of 3 ± 1. Peru has a target 2 ± 1. Peru has the lowest inflation in the region, but it's still, well, it's almost the same level at the APEC in general, but it's still below many of the Asian countries, of the APEC Asian countries. Next one, please. We in Peru have had the longest period of low inflation in the region, in part because we suffered so much during hyperinflation that I believe society learned that you cannot continue with irresponsible monetary and fiscal policies. Next one, please. In the last episode of inflation, we increased the interest rate less than our peers of the 5 bigger Latin American economies, And also, we have lowered it more than the other countries. During this period since COVID, actually, we have had the lowest interest rate in the region. During COVID, we went almost to 0.25, and now it stands at 5%. And inflation, since many months ago, is just in our target. Last 12-month inflation is 2%, which is still our target. The previous one was 1.8, and we expect inflation to be fluctuating around 2% the rest of the months of this year and next year also. Next one, please. The previous one, please. No, that's okay. Net international reserves, we're one of the countries that take with the highest proportion of reserves compared to the GDP. Thailand has more reserves of GDP than we do, but other countries have slightly less reserves over GDP. And if we consider the gross public debt, also we have the lowest in the region. We're around 1/3 of GDP as public debt, while most of the APEC countries have much higher percentage of their debt over GDP. Also, we have had, next one please, a currency that has been pretty stable. We consider how much that has changed the currency. Since 2000, it has changed 7%, compared to other Latin countries where it has changed much more. Of course, China in this period has appreciated, and many Asian countries have had even stronger currency, but within the region, actually our currency has been pretty stable around this century. Just to finish, I would say that one of the few countries probably that has an economic chapter by itself in the Constitution, and the Constitution is very protective of investor and property rights. It is established by Constitution that we cannot discriminate between foreign and domestic companies. In the Constitution, the right of every citizen and company to have their money in any currency and to have their money in any country. So by Constitution, we cannot have capital controls. Actually, I can be removed from my post if I introduce capital controls in a certain way. No? There are constitutional guarantees for property rights and contracts. If the government has signed a contract with a private firm, in by law, you cannot change it. It has to be a bilateral negotiation. And was mentioned by Mr. Zavala, we have free trade agreements with 32 countries and trading blocks that amount to almost 70% of global GDP. Thank you very much. I hope I gave a glimpse of the Peruvian economy. Thank you very much.